On behalf of the partner institutions of the STIP Forum Lecture Series, I warmly welcome you all to this 24th STIP Forum Lecture. We have a very eminent person to chair the session, Mr. Ajay Shankar, IAS 1973 batch, and he has been at the center of India's responses to global economic crisis and modernizing India's economy, and a vast range of experience in reform, including labor laws and some difficult issues. He's also been a public policy scholar at the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington and has a master's in economics from Georgetown University, Washington, and he's a senior distinguished fellow at TERI. As the main speaker, we have Professor Michael Grubb from UCL, University College London.
The subject on which we're going to spend applying our minds to for the next 45 minutes or so, I hope, is one which is at the center of what I would call the solution to the climate change problem globally, which is innovation and policy. So whatever hope there is today, and today there is greater hope in some circles than there was 10 years back, is a result of whatever innovation and technology have delivered. In terms of government and government policies, we are yet to see the kind of movement which is needed and which civil society has been wanting. But here again, I think there is the first signs of optimism, my view, where both UK and France in their parliaments have said that by 2050 they will be net carbon neutral. So it's the first time some major nation or an economy has said that. And to achieve that, it will be difficult. And innovation and policy will have to drive it. And we in India, for us, this is even more important because we are at an early stage in all this. And some of us would like to believe that underdevelopment gives you some possibility of leapfrogging. And so it's up to us to leapfrog as best as we can. And if we do want to leapfrog, and we should, and our Prime Minister is committed to it, he's ambitious, he keeps saying that in all forums, then innovation and policy would be what would enable us to leapfrog successfully and effectively. So with these few words, may I request Professor Michael Grubb to enlighten us.
I thought what might be of interest is to focus, particularly given the title of this lecture series, on which many congratulations, to focus on innovation-related issues, but set those against a backdrop of primarily UK and European experience, and then how that has affected at least my own understanding of innovation processes and dynamics. So I am well aware that every country is different. Some lessons can be transferred, some are completely irrelevant. Some you might think, well, it would work very differently, but there's some interesting points. But I think that one thing about innovation is it has to be grounded in some experience, because, to be honest, economics as it stands today, traditionally taught, actually has surprisingly little that's helped us in real economic of innovation processes and the policies. So I'm going to start just with one slide on a bit of the global picture, although I will make perhaps quite a controversial remark in that. I'm then going to move pretty quickly on to more the European and UK experience. Do we have any electricity experts in the room? Oh dear. Right.
I have dabbled in it.
I will try and say a little bit about. That's
only hydro design.
Not quite, but I'll try and explain a little bit about quite a radical change in the way that we've organised the UK electricity system, and then finally I'll move on to some more theoretical points about how I think we need to think about innovation in ways, more general ways that can then maybe adapted for different contexts. Then, if I haven't taken too long, I'll finish by saying a little bit about the observation you just kindly made about the UK's commitment to net zero emissions. In grey at the bottom, do we have any macroeconomists in the room? Not really. That's fine. I'm not going to have time to cover the bit at the bottom anyway, so if you want an offline conversation, I'm happy to. I will say a little bit in that third section, mainly drawn from a book I published a few years ago, which is partly, well, you'll get the flavour as I go through. But I'm going to start with an exam question. What do the following energy technologies all have in common? Offshore, shale, gas turbines, solar, etc. I mean, I could ask, but I will offer at least two things, despite the fact they all look completely different. Actually, they all have in common that they've all turned out to be much cheaper than anyone really expected beforehand, ex ante. The other thing is they all involved government action sustained at scale over many years on both the technology resource development and the demand price. So it doesn't matter, are you talking about finding more oil or developing renewable energy, they've all turned out to be cheaper when governments have made the effort to support major industrially based innovation. Now, one area that has been applied to is solar. Most people, by the way, like to put up quotes to support the case they're making. I have a strange habit of using quotes to do exactly the opposite. I put up quotes of things that I now vigorously disagree with. So, it is only 5 years since The Economist declared that solar power is the most expensive way of reducing carbon emissions. Björn Lomborg said Germany has gone mad in its energy policy, and a German chief executive said that solar power in Germany makes as much sense as growing pineapples in Alaska. I should say the chief executive of RWE, that company has not done very well if you look at its share price over the last 5 years. May have something to do with its CEO's view of the world, because costs have come down dramatically. One thing that has gone on in that process at the top there is we moved through the various stages of what I call the innovation chain. It's pretty simple in a way. A real innovation expert will tell you that's much too simplistic. Innovation's more complicated and dynamic and feedbacks. But it is nevertheless true. And perhaps I made a reference to economics. Very long ago, there was sort of research and development and diffusion, or invention and diffusion. And then Schumpeter came along and said, well, there's invention and there's innovation and there's diffusion. And in my experience in the energy world, there's invention over there, there's diffusion over there, and there's a very long, complicated chain of an awful lot of things that have to happen to get from one to the other.